Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye is set for talks with the leaders of South Korea's three major parties. She'll seek their cooperation to jointly respond to North Korea's nuclear test. Government sources in Seoul say they believe North Korea could conduct another nuclear test before the end of the year. South Korea and the US are upping surveillance on the regime's main test sites. Plus, Hillary Clinton has a health episode at a 9/11 memorial in New York. Her doctor says she was diagnosed with pneumonia on Friday. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 12th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye will meet with the leaders of South Korea's three main political parties in the coming hours to seek their cooperation to jointly deal with the security crisis caused by North Korea's fifth nuclear test last Friday. For more, we connect to our parliamentary correspondent Park Ji-won. Ji-won, can you walk us through the people attending this meeting?
Good afternoon, Mark. This gathering will be the first meeting between President Park and the party leaders since the 20th National Assembly kicked off and the new leaders took their posts. According to the Presidential Office, the President's Chief of Staff, the National Security Council Chief, as well as the Finance, Foreign Affairs, and Unification Ministers will attend the meeting given the severity of the security situation. From the National Assembly, the three main party leaders, Lee Jung-hyun of the ruling Saenuri Party, main opposition chief Choo Mi-ae, and Park Ji-won of the minor opposition People's Party will join with their senior spokespersons.
So this is a rare coming together of the top officials from the government on the one hand and Parliament on the other. We can presume then that the main agenda will focus on North Korea's nuclear test.
That's right, Mark. It's expected that President Park will ask for bipartisan support from the party leaders on pressing security matters, such as the upcoming deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD, especially in light of the heightened tension over the North's fifth nuclear test and the regime's continual threats. President Park will also share the results of the summit talks held during her recent trips to Russia, China, and Laos, in which she focused on garnering neighboring countries' support and cooperation to pressure Pyongyang on its nuclear program. In addition to security matters, the main opposition Minju Party and minor opposition People's Party also say they will bring up issues related to improving the people's livelihoods and other important economic matters. That's all I have for now, and I will have more updates in our next newscast. Back to you.
Thank you, Ji-won, for that report. That was our Park Ji-won reporting on the upcoming meeting between President Park and members of the National Assembly. Korea's National Assembly Speaker left for the United States this morning to meet with legislators there on ways to strengthen the Seoul-Washington alliance against Pyongyang's threats. In a first for the Assembly, Chung Sye-kyun will be joined by the floor leaders of Korea's three main parties. Their schedule includes a meeting with U.S. House Speaker Paul Ryan in Washington, D.C., where they're expected to discuss countermeasures to North Korea's nuclear activities and maintaining peace and security in Northeast Asia. The four representatives will also head to New York for talks on Thursday with UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. So the world is still processing the implications of North Korea's fifth nuclear test, but there's already speculation Pyongyang could conduct yet another one before this year is out. Connie Kim has more.
North Korea has reportedly completed preparations for another nuclear test. Multiple sources within the South Korean government said Monday that South Korea and U.S. intelligence authorities are keeping a close eye on the possibility Pyongyang may push the button on its sixth test at the third unused tunnel of its Punggye-ri test site. Seoul's defense ministry on Monday also confirmed that the North is always ready for an additional nuclear test at Punggye-ri in North Korea's northeast region. The first nuclear tests have been conducted at the first tunnel, and 4 nuclear tests have been conducted at the second tunnel at its mountainous test site. Seoul and Washington have evaluated that the North will most likely forge ahead with another nuclear provocation before the end of the year, as Pyongyang vowed to continue its nuclear development when it announced last Friday's test. To respond to any sudden movements, South Korean and the U.S. military authorities have increased surveillance assets to monitor areas near the Punggye-ri test site. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The planned deployment of a U.S. strategic bomber from Guam to South Korea has been postponed due to local weather conditions in light of last Friday's nuclear test by North Korea. South Korean and U.S. authorities had been hoping to deploy a bomber to the peninsula today, but those plans have been pushed back at least 24 hours. Military officials say the deployment will send a strong warning to North Korea over its nuclear test and make the regime think twice about conducting more provocations. Andersen Air Force Base in Guam is home to B-52, B-1B and B-2 stealth bombers, but Washington has not specified which one will be deployed. Seoul and Washington's representatives to the six-party talks are expected to meet this week in South Korea to discuss their response to Pyongyang's latest nuclear test. Washington's special nuclear envoy Sung Kim is to arrive in Seoul on Monday evening for a two-day stay, during which he'll meet with his South Korean counterpart Kim Hong-gyun on Tuesday. According to an official, they're expected to discuss the possibility of additional sanctions on Pyongyang on the bilateral as well as the UN, United Nations level. Over the weekend, Sung Kim met with his Japanese counterpart on the same issue, discussing ways to put pressure on the North through a three-way framework, including South Korea. Questions over Hillary Clinton's health have sprung up once again after she appeared to faint in New York. The personal doctor of the Democratic presidential candidate has tied her sudden departure from a 9/11 ceremony to a pneumonia diagnosis made last Friday. Clinton has cancelled a planned trip to California after the diagnosis was made public. Kim Mok-yeon reports.
In a statement Sunday, Hillary Clinton's physician Lisa Bardak said Clinton has been diagnosed with pneumonia some 48 hours earlier after suffering from a prolonged cough. Earlier in the day, the Democratic presidential nominee had been taken ill at a memorial for the victims of the 9/11 attacks in New York. Video taken by a bystander showed Clinton being pulled into her vehicle by her support staff after appearing to collapse. Her campaign spokesman said afterwards that Clinton felt overheated and was taken to her daughter's Manhattan apartment. Leaving a few hours later, Clinton claimed she was feeling much better.
How are you feeling, Secretary Clinton?
Great. Feeling great.
What happened? Just a second, give us a little statement.
It's a beautiful day in New York.
Dr. Bardak said that since the pneumonia diagnosis, Clinton has been put on antibiotics and advised to rest and modify her schedule. The Republican nominee Donald Trump has repeatedly raised questions about Clinton's health and whether she had the stamina to serve as president. Clinton's medical history and current health status have been a matter of debate for years. She has been treated for several illnesses in the past, including a blood clot in her head in late 2012. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
The authorities in Singapore and Thailand have reported more than 24 new cases of the Zika virus transmitted locally. Singapore's health ministry announced 11 cases on Sunday, bringing the city-state's tally to 329. 8 of those have been identified as pregnant women. Of the 21 newly confirmed Zika patients in Thailand, 1 woman later gave birth to a child, though the newborn had none of the birth defects associated with Zika. Earlier this month, researchers found that the Zika virus circulating in Southeast Asia is likely not the same as the strain that originated in Brazil and may not cause the same birth defects, which include a smaller head and underdeveloped brain. Over many decades, locals may have also developed an immunity to the disease. Now, amid a slump in the local shipping industry, Korea saw its biggest trade deficit on record in the first half of the year in transport-related activities. Outgoing payments for transport of people and goods by air and sea outpaced incoming by over $1 billion. Oh Jung-hee has more.
Korea's transport sector posted a deficit of over $1 billion in the first 7 months of the year due to sluggish global demand and falling exports. Bank of Korea data released on Monday shows the sector's income from January to the end of July was $15 billion, while outgoings were over $16 billion. This marks the first time the sector has posted a deficit in a half-year period since related records were first compiled in 2006. By subsector, the country's shipping industry saw the largest deficit of $894 million, with its cargo transport income tumbling over 28% compared to the same period last year. According to the Korea Customs Service on Monday, Korea's exports for the first 10 days of September declined 3.6%. In August, Korea's exports rebounded after falling for 19 straight months. The disappointing September figures come as cargo volumes and fares decreased as sluggish economic growth in China, Europe, and Japan eroded overseas demand. Experts say the deficit and sluggish exports may continue for a while, considering Korea's biggest shipping firm, Hanjin Shipping, is in dire financial straits after filing for court receivership 2 weeks ago. 오정희, Arirang News.
Korean shares were down Monday morning on increased worries over the global economy and other concerns, including North Korea's nuclear test and Samsung's worldwide recall of its newest smartphone. As of noon, the benchmark Kospi was down nearly 2%, trading at 1,999 points. In the first 15 minutes of trading, Samsung Electronics plunged over 5%. The nation's largest refiner, SK Innovation, lost 2.57% on falling oil prices. Auto shares fell as well, with leading automaker Hyundai Motor and its sister company Kia Motors shedding 0.36% and 1.46% respectively. The global recall of Samsung's Galaxy Note 7 doesn't seem to have tainted the Korean tech giant's brand image that much. According to a survey by Android Police on over 11,500 people, almost 4 in 10 said the incident did not negatively affect their opinion of Samsung. In early September, Samsung Electronics announced a global recall, saying the Note 7's battery may catch fire while being charged. More than a third of the respondents said Samsung's quick and effective response to the safety issue had actually raised their trust in the company. Less than a quarter said their trust in Samsung had fallen. However, as we just mentioned, it is a bit of a different story on the local bourse, with Samsung Electronics' shares falling over 6% now in morning trading. New data shows Korea's exports of information and communications-related products are still falling, but may be headed for a recovery. According to the Trade Ministry, ICT exports in August fell 2.1% from a year earlier for a total of $14 billion. But that's a smaller decline than in July, when they dropped nearly 7%. The improvement was attributed to a 2.5% rise in shipments of semiconductors and a smaller decrease in exports of displays. Meanwhile, imports of ICT products also fell a fraction of a percent for a total of $7.5 billion for an ICT trade surplus for August of $6.6 billion. Now, many people assume that the major cause of fatty liver disease is too much alcohol intake. However, research now shows that 80% of patients with fatty liver disease do not even drink alcohol. Lee Min-young explains the other factors which led to the disease.
1 in 3 Koreans suffers from fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease is a condition that occurs when large amounts of fat accumulate in liver cells. Despite having multiple causes, fatty liver disease is considered to be caused mostly by excessive alcohol intake. However, latest research shows that 80% of patients with the disease in Korea do not drink alcohol. In fact, the number of patients with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has doubled in the last 6 years. Experts now say that the biggest factor in causing the disease is carbohydrates. Compared to people who eat less carbohydrates, men and women who intake a lot of carbohydrates are 1.7 times and 3.8 times more likely to suffer from fatty livers, respectively.
The fatty liver disease is prevalent among Koreans because Korean people tend to eat a lot of carbohydrates. It's important to reduce the intake of other kinds of carbohydrates, such as food made of flour and noodles.
Obesity is another factor that can lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This explains why fatty liver disease is being observed among many parents in their 40s and 50s and among overweight children as well. If left unattended, fatty liver disease can develop into fatal diseases such as cirrhosis and even liver cancer. To prevent this, doctors advise citizens to exercise for at least 10 minutes a day, watch their eating habits, and visit the doctor for regular checkups. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Well, those are stories we have for you at this hour on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. Have a great day. Goodbye.